All right, let's get right into it. Today we're looking at PG Electroplast and their latest quarterly results.
Oh, yeah, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they're reporting huge increases to both their revenue and their net profits, right?
Yeah, they're saying an 82% revenue increase and a net profit surge of 110%.
Oh, wow.
And it seems like it's not just a one-off good quarter for them.
Yeah, it feels like they've been on a roll for a while, right?
Yeah, it's a pattern of consistent growth, it seems like, and they've even raised their revenue projections for the whole year.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they were shooting for a minimum of 4,550 crores just for PG Electroplast.
Right.
And then on top of that, another 550 crores from their joint venture, Goodworth Electronics.
Yeah, it's a combined 5,100 crores.
Which is a potential 86% growth.
Right, compared to their last fiscal year.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So how are they doing it?
Well, I think we should examine their different business segments.
Okay, so let's start with their so-called bread and butter, the product business.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
That makes up about 69% of their total revenue.
Okay.
And the real stars in that segment are the room air conditioners, or RACs as they're called.
RACs, okay.
Yeah, their revenue from RACs alone has gone up by 154%.
154%?
Yeah, it's a big jump.
Wow, no wonder they're excited.
Yeah, and it's not just the ACs. They've also seen good growth in their washing machine sales. Those are up by about 49%.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is really interesting. PG Electroplast is saying that a good amount of this success is coming from gains in market share.
So it's not just that the industry is growing as a whole.
Right. It's not just like they're riding the wave. They're actually taking customers away from their competitors.
Oh, wow. That's even more impressive.
Yeah, they're really doing well in that area.
Okay. But it's not just ACs and washing machines, right?
Right.
What about their other operations, like their electronics business or the Goodworth Electronics joint venture? And then there's that whole electric vehicle assembly operation.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to get into all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So with the electronics business, they're making things like security cameras, sandboxes, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And they're even branching out and offering their electronics expertise to clients outside of their company.
Oh, so they're sort of trying to become like a full-service electronics manufacturing solution for anyone who needs it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what about their joint venture with Goodworth Electronics?
So that's where they're focusing on laptops, tablets, and devices like that.
Okay.
They haven't had a major breakthrough in that segment yet, but it's something to keep an eye on, I think.
Right. Could be big in the future.
Yeah.
And then there's their newest venture, the electric vehicle assembly.
Yeah, it seems like they're going all in on that.
They are. They're projecting to start assembly in the next few months, and their sales targets are pretty ambitious, shall we say.
Yeah, 500 crores in sales from just one client by their second year.
That's right. And this includes both electric vehicle assembly and battery assembly, so they're really diving into that sector.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, but with all this growth and expansion, there's got to be some challenges, right?
Right. Every business faces challenges. And one of the biggest that PG Electroplast has highlighted is the whole supply chain situation.
Yeah, especially that shortage of compressors.
Right. That's been impacting the entire industry.
Yeah. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, it sounds like they've been pretty proactive. They've built up a pretty big inventory of components.
Okay, so they're trying to ride out the storm and be ready for that high demand.
Yeah, especially with the air conditioning season coming up.
Right. So strategic inventory management is key here.
It seems like it.
Okay. But are there any other industry trends besides those supply chain issues that could impact PG Electroplast?
Well, one interesting thing that's happening is there seems to be a return to outsourcing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for a while there was a trend of companies bringing manufacturing in-house, but that seems to be reversing now.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with those very supply chain disruptions we were just talking about.
Oh, right. So it's actually more difficult and expensive for companies to manage their own manufacturing when they're constantly dealing with these shortages and delays?
Exactly.
So it's more efficient to just outsource to a company that's already set up to handle all of that.
Right. And then there's the cost factor, too. It's often just cheaper for companies to outsource to specialists like PG Electroplast
Than to try to do everything themselves.
Exactly.
So PG Electroplast is really in a good position to take advantage of this trend.
Yeah, it seems like they're becoming the go-to experts for outsourcing in this industry.
Okay. But they're not just relying on market trends, right? I'm seeing something here about government incentives, too.
Oh, yeah. They've been playing that game pretty smartly.
Yep.
They've managed to secure what are called production-linked incentive benefits, or PLI benefits, from both the central and state governments.
Now, for those of us who aren't familiar with government jargon, What exactly are PLI benefits?
Well, basically, it's like a financial reward that the government gives to companies that reach certain production targets.
Okay.
It's a way for the government to encourage more manufacturing within the country and boost the economy.
So it's a win-win for both PG Electroplast and the government.
Yeah, it seems like.
They get some extra financial support, and the government gets a boost to the economy.
Right.
It really does seem like everything's coming up roses for them right now.
Yeah, it does.
But realistically, can they really keep up this incredible growth?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they've got all these aggressive plans for expansion. They're talking about diversifying into even more product lines, like making compressors and other components.
Right.
And they're really focused on increasing their market share even more.
That's like they're not just trying to be a major player.
Yeah, it's like they want to dominate the whole market.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how their strategy plays out, but we also have to think about the risks involved.
Of course, no business is without risks.
Well,
So what are some of the things that could potentially trip PG Electroplast up in the future?
first of all, there's the question of sustainability. Can they keep performing at this really high level?
Right, it's like a sprinter who's just broken a world record. Can they keep running that fast, or are they going to hit a wall eventually?
Right, exactly. And then there's the competition. The market for consumer durables is really fierce.
Oh, yeah. There are new players popping up all the time.
Yeah. So PG Electroplast needs to keep innovating and setting themselves apart from the competition.
They can't afford to just sit back and relax.
No, they have to keep pushing the boundaries and coming up with new products and services that will keep customers coming back for more.
Right. But what about external factors? Things that are outside of their control?
Yeah, of course, economic conditions always play a role. Things like inflation, changes in interest rates, even things happening globally can all have an impact on consumer spending.
And that could directly affect PG Electroplast's bottom line.
Exactly. So even if they're doing everything right internally, there's always a chance that some outside force could throw them off course.
Right. So there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, there is.
But I think to really understand these potential risks, we need to take a closer look at PG Electroplast's plans, especially their move into what's called backward integration, particularly when it comes to manufacturing compressors.
Yeah, that's where things start to get really interesting.
Okay, so I guess we'll have to save that for part 2 of this deep dive.
Sounds good. We'll really get into the numbers, look at their strategy for backward integration, and explore the whole competitive landscape they're operating in.
All right, well, until then, folks, stay tuned. So we were talking about some of the risks and challenges for PG Electroplast, and one of the big ones is that new electric vehicle assembly operation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big move for them, right? They've never done anything like that before.
It's a brand new area for them. They're going up against all these established companies, and there's still a lot of uncertainty in that market.
Right, and remember, they're projecting 500 crores in sales by the second year from just one client.
Yeah, that's a lot riding on this new venture.
It is, and I mean, they have experience in electronics manufacturing, so maybe that'll help them with the EV battery assembly, but vehicle assembly is a whole different ballgame.
So what are some of the challenges you see them facing in this market?
Well, for one thing, the EV market is changing so fast that technology is always evolving. Consumer preferences are still kind of up in the air, and the government regulations are changing all the time.
So it's not just about building a good electric car.
Right. It's about navigating this really unpredictable landscape.
And then there's the competition.
Yeah, they're going up against some really big players, companies that have been doing this for decades.
So it's not going to be easy for them to break into this market.
Not at all, but at least they're not going in completely blind. They've partnered with a good client, and they're starting with just assembly, not the whole manufacturing process.
Okay, so that's a smart approach. Dip their toes in the water, first learn the ropes, and then maybe expand later.
Exactly, and it's important to remember that this is a long-term plan for them. They're not expecting to make a killing overnight.
It's more about laying the groundwork for future growth and diversifying their business.
Right.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about their core business, specifically their plans for what they call backward integration, especially when it comes to making compressors.
Yeah, this is where things get interesting. Remember how we were talking about that global shortage of compressors?
Oh, yeah. That's been a major headache for PG Electroplast and the whole industry.
Right, and they've been dealing with it by managing their inventory carefully, but it seems like they want a more permanent solution.
So what are they planning to do?
Well, they've said that they're in some pretty serious talks to set up a partnership that would allow them to start producing compressors themselves in-house.
Wow, so they're going to start making their own compressors.
That's the plan.
That's a huge step if they can pull it off.
Yeah, it would mean they wouldn't have to rely on outside suppliers as much. They'd have more control over their supply chain.
And they could probably reduce their costs too, right?
Right, potentially improve their margins.
So it's a strategic move that could pay off big time down the road.
Yeah, but it's not without risks. Setting up a whole compressor manufacturing facility is a big undertaking.
Yeah, it takes a lot of money, technical know-how, and a deep understanding of the market.
Right. And there's always the chance they could overestimate demand or run into unexpected problems with production.
Okay, so there are definitely risks involved.
There are, but PG Electroplast does have a good track record when it comes to diversifying. They've entered new markets before and adapted pretty quickly.
So they've shown that they can handle risk effectively.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the potential rewards if they can set up a cost-effective compressor production line that could give them a big edge over their competitors.
It's a gamble, but it could be a really smart one.
It could.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit now and talk about the overall industry outlook for consumer durables in India. What are some of the big trends and challenges that are shaping this market?
Well, one of the biggest trends is that people in India have more disposable income than they used to.
Right, as more people move into the middle class, they have more money to spend on things like consumer durables.
Exactly, and that's driving growth across the board, everything from refrigerators and washing machines to air conditioners and TVs.
It's a good time to be in the consumer durables business in India.
It seems like it.
But of course, more growth also means more competition.
That's right. So, what are some of the challenges that PG Electroplast is facing from its competitors?
Well, like we were talking about before, the market is really crowded. There are all these domestic and international companies all fighting for market share.
And these companies aren't just sitting around. They're innovating, expanding their product lines, and investing heavily in marketing and distribution.
So PG Electroplast has to keep up.
They do. They have to keep innovating, find ways to be more efficient, and offer competitive prices if they want to hold on to their market share.
It's a constant race.
It is, but one thing that's working in their favor is the government's focus on promoting domestic manufacturing.
Right. All those PLI benefits and other government initiatives.
Yeah, that's creating a really good environment for companies like PG Electroplast.
It's helping them compete with those big international companies.
Exactly. But even with those advantages, they still have to be aware of the risks and challenges.
So what are some of the things that could potentially derail their growth?
Well, one big risk is a slowdown in the Indian economy. If growth stalls, that could mean people will start spending less.
And that would hurt demand for PG Electroplast products.
Exactly. And we've seen how global events can affect the Indian economy.
Right, it's all connected.
And then there's the risk of inflation if the cost of materials and labor keeps going up.
That's going to squeeze their profit margins unless they can raise prices.
Right, but consumers are only willing to pay so much.
Exactly. So if prices get too high, people might start cutting back on their spending, and that would hurt demand for PG Electroplast products.
Right, and then there's the whole issue of technology. The consumer durables market is always evolving. New innovations are coming out all the time.
Yeah, like those smart refrigerators that can order your groceries for you.
Exactly, and if PG Electroplast doesn't keep up with the latest technology, they risk falling behind.
It's a constant game of adaptation.
It is, but they do have some strengths. They have a solid track record, a diverse range of products, and a good financial position.
And they've shown that they can execute their plans and deal with challenges effectively.
So even though there are risks, they're also well positioned to take advantage of the growth in the Indian consumer durables market.
It's a bit of a mixed bag.
It is, but to really understand their chances of success, I think we need to look more closely at their competition.
Okay, so I guess that's what we'll pick up in part 3 of this deep dive. We'll analyze who PG Electroplast is up against and what strategies they're using to stay ahead of the game. Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've been talking about PG Electroplast, and in this final part, we're going to look at the competitive landscape they're up against in the Indian consumer durables market.
Right, so it's a pretty crowded market. They're going up against companies like Dixon Technologies, Amber Enterprises, Voltas, just to name a few.
Yeah, so there are a lot of players out there. What makes PG Electroplast stand out? What's their edge?
Well, one of their biggest strengths is their reputation for quality and reliability. They've built up these long-standing partnerships with some really big brands, and that kind of trust is really important in this industry.
Yeah, it makes sense in manufacturing. Your reputation is everything you have to deliver consistent quality
Yeah.
if you want to keep your customers coming back.
Exactly. And PG Electroplast has really proven themselves in that area. They've also been very strategic about how they've expanded their capacity and diversified their products. They're focusing on areas where they really excel.
So it's not just about chasing every opportunity that comes along. It's about making smart, calculated moves.
Right. It's about playing to their strengths.
Okay, but besides just being good at what they do, are there any other factors that give them a competitive edge?
Well, they've been really clever about taking advantage of government incentives and policies.
Right, like those PLI benefits we were talking about before.
Yeah, that's given them a big financial boost and helped them stay ahead of the competition.
It's like having a tailwind pushing them forward.
Right, exactly.
Okay, but even with all these advantages, there's still some question marks about their future, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things that we're still wondering about.
Oh, what are some of the big unknowns?
Well, one thing I'm curious about is how long this trend of outsourcing is going to last. Is this a permanent shift, or is it just a reaction to the current disruptions in the market?
Right, because if it's just a temporary thing, then PG Electroplast's growth could slow down once things go back to normal.
Yeah, that's something to keep an eye on for sure.
What else are we wondering about?
I'm also really interested to see what happens with their electric vehicle assembly operation. That's a whole new world for them. It's high risk, high reward.
It's a big gamble, and it remains to be seen if they can replicate their success in the EV market.
Yeah, and another crucial factor is going to be their ability to attract and keep talented employees. The competition for skilled engineers and managers is fierce.
Oh yeah, in today's world, your workforce is your most valuable asset. If you don't have a good team, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. So PG Electroplast needs to make sure they're offering competitive salaries and benefits if they want to stay ahead of the game.
Okay, so talent acquisition is definitely something to watch.
Definitely. And then, of course, there's always the possibility of technological disruptions, that the consumer durables market is constantly evolving.
New innovations are popping up all the time. If they fall behind technologically, they're in trouble.
Exactly. They need to stay agile, invest in research and development, and be ready to adapt.
So basically, they need to keep their finger on the pulse of what's new and exciting in the market.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget about external factors like the economy and government policies.
Yeah.
Those are things they can't control, but they need to be prepared to adjust to them.
Right. It's all about being flexible and adapting to the changing circumstances.
Okay, so taking everything into account, what's our overall assessment of PG Electroplast's future?
Well, I think they're a company with a lot of potential. They have a strong track record, a diverse range of products, a solid strategy, and a capable leadership team.
Yeah, I agree. They seem to be doing a lot of things right.
The key to their future success is going to be how well they execute their plans, navigate the challenges that come up, and adapt to the constantly changing market.
So to wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think the main takeaway is that PG Electroplast is a company worth paying attention to. They're making big moves in the consumer durables market, and they have what it takes to become a major player in the years to come.
But it's not going to be easy. They're facing stiff competition, economic uncertainties, and the constant pressure to innovate.
It's a challenging but exciting time for them.
Yeah.
So the big question is, will they become the next household name, or will they stumble under the weight of all these challenges? Only time will tell.
Right. And that's what makes it so interesting to follow their journey.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.